My name is Marina. I'm 43 years old, and for 2 years straight, every single Friday, I packed my husband's bag for the road. A thermos of chicken soup, a container of homemade cutlets, fresh towels, medications from the list he texted me every week, because his mother was dying. That's what he told me 2 years ago, on a gray November evening, sitting at our kitchen table with an ashen face. Mom's test results are bad, Marina. The doctors say it's her heart, her blood vessels, everything at once. She needs care. I'll be driving out to her on weekends. Every weekend. His mother, Tamara, lived about 200 miles away, in the small town where Victor grew up. I offered, "Let's go together. Let's move her in with us. Let's hire a professional caregiver. I'll find the best one money can buy." He shook his head. "She won't accept a stranger in her house. You know how she is. And you too. You've never been close. It'll just stress her out. It has to be me. Just me." And I believed him. God, how I believed him. For 2 years, my husband left every Friday at 6 in the evening and came back Sunday night, tired, quiet, smelling of the road. I didn't ask too many questions. When a man is watching his mother fade away, you don't interrogate him. You support him. You warm up his dinner. You tell him he's a good son. I told him that. I actually said those words. "Victor, you're such a good son. Not every man would do this." He would look at me with those tired eyes and say, "I'm just doing what has to be done." Remember that phrase. I'm just doing what has to be done. It will come back at the end of this story, and when it does, it will mean something very, very different. Let me back up and tell you who we were, or who I thought we were. Victor and I had been married for 19 years. We met at work, a logistics company where I was an accountant and he was a sales manager with a crooked smile and an ability to talk anyone into anything. That should have been my first warning, by the way. A man who can talk anyone into anything will eventually talk you into something too. You just won't know when it's happening. We built a good life. A house in the suburbs. My inheritance from my grandmother paid for most of it, but we finished it together. No children. That was a wound we carried quietly. 3 rounds of IVF in our 30s, 3 failures, and then one evening Victor held my hands and said, "Marina, stop. I can't watch this destroy you. It's you and me. That's enough. You are enough." I cried that night from gratitude. I thought I had married the kindest man alive. 19 years. I did his laundry, tracked his cholesterol, planned his mother's birthday gifts. When his company downsized during the pandemic and he lost his job for 8 months, I carried us both on my salary and never once made him feel small about it. That's what marriage is, I thought. You carry each other. So when he started disappearing every weekend to care for his dying mother, it never even occurred to me to doubt him. Doubt him? I was proud of him. I told my coworkers about him. My husband spends every weekend caring for his sick mother. The women at my office would sigh. "Marina, you won the lottery with that one. Men like that don't exist anymore." They were right. Men like that don't exist. Now, about Tamara, my mother-in-law. We were never enemies, but we were never close. She was a hard woman, sharp-tongued, proud, a retired school principal who ran her house the way she'd run her school, with inspections and verdicts. In 19 years of marriage, she'd visited us maybe 10 times. She'd call Victor on Sundays. He'd take the phone into another room. I always assumed she didn't think I was good enough for her son. Childless, too independent, too quiet. I'd made peace with it. Not every family is warm. When Victor told me she was dying, I sent gifts. Warm slippers. Expensive vitamins. Honey. Hand cream. Every Friday, along with the soup, I'd tuck something into his bag for tomorrow. I'd write little notes. Get well, thinking of you, Marina. 2 years of notes. Keep those notes in mind, too. Because they were found, just not by the person I sent them to. The first crack appeared in March, small, almost invisible. It was a Saturday. Victor was at his mother's. I was cleaning out our hall closet and found his old winter jacket, the one he'd worn on his trips all last winter. I was about to put it in a donation bag when I checked the pockets. Old habit. Accountants check everything. A receipt. A restaurant receipt from a steakhouse, dated a Saturday in February. $240. 2 steaks. A bottle of wine. A dessert called chocolate fondant with raspberry heart. I stood there in the hallway holding that little strip of paper, and I remember my brain doing what women's brains do best, defending him. He probably took his mother out. She probably felt better that day. That's sweet. But there was a still, cold voice underneath, a voice I'd learned to trust much later, and it said, "A dying woman with a bad heart ate a steak and drank wine? And dessert with a raspberry heart? In February? Around Valentine's Day?" I put the receipt in my jewelry box. I didn't say anything. I told myself it was nothing. That receipt lay in my jewelry box for 3 months. Sometimes at night, when Victor was asleep beside me, I'd think about it, and then I'd feel ashamed. This man spends every weekend spoon-feeding his sick mother, and you're auditing his receipts, Marina. What is wrong with you? Shame. That's the mechanism, by the way. That's how they get away with it for years. Not because we're blind, because we're ashamed of our own eyes. And then came June 9th, a Tuesday, 7:42 in the evening. I was watering the tomatoes on the back porch when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't pick up. Hello? Silence for a second. Then an older woman's voice. Dry, firm, instantly familiar, even though I hadn't heard it in over a year. Marina? This is Tamara. My heart jumped. My first thought, pure panic. She's calling to say goodbye. She's dying, and she's calling to say goodbye. Tamara, how are you feeling? Are you all right? A pause. A long one. And then my dying mother-in-law said the sentence that split my life into before and after. Marina, I'm going to ask you one question, and I want you to answer me honestly. Why hasn't my son come to see me in 5 years? The watering can slipped out of my hand. Water spread across the porch boards, soaking into my slippers, and I just stood there. What do you mean? I whispered. He's with you every weekend. He's been caring for you for 2 years. You're sick. Your heart. Another pause. And then Tamara said, very quietly and very clearly, "My heart is perfectly fine, dear. I swim at the community pool twice a week. I haven't seen Victor since my 75th birthday, 5 years ago. He calls on Sundays for 10 minutes. That's it." Her voice hardened. "So now, Marina, you're going to tell me exactly where my son goes every weekend. Because yesterday, I ran into Lyuba Vasilyeva at the market. She was visiting her daughter over in Crestwood, 1 town from you. And she saw my Victor at a playground, with a young woman, and a little boy on his shoulders. And the boy was calling him Daddy." The tomatoes. I remember staring at the tomatoes. Green, hard, not ripe yet. Somewhere a neighbor's lawnmower was humming. The world hadn't noticed that it had just ended. Marina, are you there? I'm here, I said, and I didn't recognize my own voice. It was calm, flat. The voice of a woman whose insides had just been switched off. Tamara, tell me everything Lyuba saw. Every detail. And she did. Playground in Crestwood, 20 minutes from my house. A woman around 35, long dark hair. A boy about 4 years old. Victor pushing him on the swings. Victor kissing the woman by a gray SUV. Victor loading a child's bike into the trunk. Our trunk, the car I'd chosen the color of. Lyuba had recognized him instantly. She'd known him since he was a schoolboy. She hadn't approached. She'd taken a photo and sent it to Tamara with the message, "Isn't this your Vitya?" "I'm sending you the photo," Tamara said. My phone buzzed. I opened the image. You know, I'd been holding on until that second. Some part of me was still negotiating. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe it's a coworker. Maybe. Then the photo loaded. My husband. In the blue polo shirt I'd given him for his birthday. Laughing. Laughing the way he hadn't laughed at home in 10 years. On his shoulders, a little boy, mouth open in delight, and gripping the boy's tiny sneaker to keep him steady. Victor's hand, with the wedding ring on it. 19 years. 2 years of soup in thermoses. Notes for a dying woman. You're such a good son. He wasn't going to his mother. There was no illness. Every Friday, my husband took my chicken soup, my clean towels, my little notes, and drove 20 minutes to his other family, to his other woman, to his son, the son he could never give me. It's you and me, that's enough. You are enough. I sat down right on the wet porch floor, in the puddle from the watering can, and I couldn't breathe. And on the phone, the dry, steady voice of the woman I'd spent 19 years thinking despised me said, "Marina, listen to me, girl. Don't you dare cry, and don't you dare say a word to him. Not one word. Do you hear me? I raised that boy, and I know how he lies. He'll wriggle out, he'll turn it around, he'll make you feel crazy." A pause. "First thing tomorrow, I'm getting on a bus to you, and then you and I are going to have a talk, woman to woman." She hung up. I sat on the porch until it got dark. Then I stood up, went inside, warmed up dinner, and set the table for 2. Because at 9 p.m., my husband came home from work, kissed my cheek, and said, "Smells amazing. Oh, by the way, I'll probably have to leave early Friday. Mom's not doing so well again." And I smiled and said, "Of course, honey. I'll make the soup." Tamara arrived the next day at noon. I saw her from the window, walking up from the bus stop, straight-backed, in a strict gray coat despite the June heat, a small suitcase in one hand. 79 years old, and she moved like a woman leading an army. The dying woman my husband had been nursing for 2 years walked half a mile from the bus stop without stopping once to rest. I opened the door. We stood looking at each other, 2 women who'd kept a polite distance for 19 years, connected only by love for a man who, as it turned out, had betrayed us both. "Well," Tamara said, looking me over, "you've lost weight since the wedding." "He probably told you I criticized your figure, didn't he?" "He said, you thought I wasn't right for him." She let out a short, bitter laugh, stepping inside. "Of course he did. And me, he told that you refused to visit, that you found me difficult, that you were the one who wanted distance." She set down her suitcase and looked me straight in the eye. 19 years, Marina. 19 years he kept us apart like a fence between 2 yards. And I was fool enough, and you were fool enough, to never once check. Do you understand why now? I did. My skin went cold, but I did. If the wife and the mother never talk, no one compares stories. No one asks, "Wait, when did you last actually see him?" The two women who knew him best in the world had been carefully, methodically kept in separate rooms. For years. Long before the mistress. Victor hadn't become a liar 2 years ago. He had always been building the architecture of lies. The mistress just moved into a house that was already built. "Put the kettle on," Tamara said, taking off her coat. "And bring paper and a pen. We're not going to sit around crying. We're going to work." I need to tell you about those first hours, because this is what saved me. I was still in shock, moving like a sleepwalker, sudden waves of nausea, my hands shaking whenever I picked up my phone. If I'd been alone, I know exactly what I would have done. Confronted him that same night, screamed, thrown the photo in his face, listened to his excuses. And he, a salesman who could talk anyone into anything, would have found the words. Maybe he'd have even convinced me the child wasn't his. And everything of value would have quietly moved out of my reach while I was busy crying. But I wasn't alone. I had a retired school principal at my kitchen table. "First," Tamara said, drawing a line on the paper, "facts only. What do we know? He's in Crestwood on weekends. The woman. The boy, around 4. That means it started at least 5 years ago. Second, money. You're an accountant, Marina. You have full access to family finances? To the joint account, yes. But he has his own card. His salary comes to..." I stopped. 2 years ago. Right around the time his mother fell ill, Victor had moved his salary to a different bank. The company's switching payroll providers. It's a corporate thing. He'd been transferring money into our joint account for household expenses. Always the same amount, always on time. I'd never seen the rest. Third, Tamara went on, calm as a surgeon. The house. Whose name? Mine. It was built with my grandmother's inheritance. The deed is in my name. For the first time that day, Tamara smiled. Good girl, your grandmother. What about the cars? Savings? We spent the entire day mapping our marriage like a crime scene. And with every hour, the picture got darker. The savings account, for retirement, that Victor managed, I hadn't checked the balance in over a year. The loan he'd taken out 8 months ago, for a business venture with a coworker. $60,000, and I'd signed as informed spouse without reading it carefully. Because you support your husband, don't you? By evening, my hands weren't shaking anymore. Fear has a strange property. When it becomes information, when it's written down in neat columns, it turns into something else, into a plan. Now, the most important thing, Tamara said when it got dark. You'll want to confront him. Tonight, when he walks through that door, you'll look at his face and you'll want to burn it all down. And you'll have to swallow it. She reached across the table and gripped my hand. Her fingers were dry and strong. Marina, I've known that boy for 51 years. I love him. A mother doesn't get a choice. But I know his price. If you tip him off, you'll be left with nothing. He's spent 5 years preparing. You get to spend a few months. Can you smile at him for a few months? I thought about the thermoses of soup, about the notes, get well, thinking of you, about 3 rounds of IVF and you are enough, about the boy on his shoulders. I can, I said. And here's what's strange. Saying it out loud, I felt, for the first time in 2 days, something other than pain. Something cold, clear, and almost calm. Later, I'd learned there's a name for what we started that night. Lawyers call it pre-divorce financial planning. Tamara called it differently. That evening, folding her reading glasses, she said, "He spent 2 years pretending to care for a dying woman. Now the dying woman is going to spend a few months caring for him. Believe me, girl, I'm going to be a very, very devoted mother." That Friday, Victor left at 6 p.m. sharp, with a thermos of chicken soup, fresh towels, and a note for his mother tucked in the bag. His mother, at that moment, was sitting in my kitchen, drinking tea from his favorite mug. We watched from the window as his car pulled out of the driveway. 20 minutes to Crestwood, to the dark-haired woman, to the boy who called him Daddy. "Now then," Tamara said, setting down her mug. "He's gone till Sunday. Bring me his laptop, Marina. In 40 years of running a school, I never once failed to find out what the 10th graders were hiding. Let's see if my son is any smarter than a 10th grader." He wasn't. What we found in that laptop over the next 2 days was worse than the affair. So much worse. The second family, that turned out to be only the cover story. There's a special kind of silence that settles over a house when 2 women are reading a man's secret life off a laptop screen. Victor's password, by the way, was the name of his childhood dog plus his birth year. Tamara guessed it on the second try. 51 years old, she muttered, and the boy still thinks Rex is a secret. The first folder we found was almost boring. Photos. Hundreds of them. The dark-haired woman, her name was Alina, we learned quickly, at the beach. Alina in a kitchen I didn't recognize. The boy's first birthday. 2nd. 3rd. 4th. My husband blowing out candles with a child while I sat at home, 300 meters of soup jars away, believing he was holding his dying mother's hand. The boy's name was Daniel, born in February, which meant he was conceived a full year before the sick mother story even started. So Victor hadn't invented the dying mother to start the affair. He'd invented her because a baby had arrived, and weekends with a newborn required a permanent, unquestionable alibi. A dying mother is the perfect alibi. No one checks. No one asks to come along, and it can last exactly as long as you need it to. Tamara looked at the photos of her grandson, her actual grandson, whose existence had been hidden from her for a long time. Her face didn't move, only her hands, folded on the table, pressed together a little tighter. "The boy is not guilty of anything," she finally said. "Remember that, Marina. Whatever we do, the boy is not a target. Ever." "Agreed," I said, and I meant it. Then we opened his email. And that's when the affair stopped being the worst thing in that laptop. The folder was called Consulting. Inside, 2 years of correspondence with a man named Gene, an old friend of Victor's who worked at a real estate firm. I started reading, and my accountant's brain, which had been in shock for 3 days, suddenly snapped awake and started doing what it does best. Line by line, letter by letter, a scheme assembled itself in front of me. 1. The $60,000 loan, the one I'd co-signed for a business venture, had never gone to any business. It had gone toward a down payment on a house in Crestwood, registered to Alina. My signature helped buy my husband's mistress her home. I signed it between making him soup and packing his towels. 2. The retirement savings account had been drained to $11,000. Over 2 years, small transfers, always just under the amounts that trigger notifications. Where did it go? A newly registered LLC, sole listed member, Alina. Company activity, consulting services. The company had exactly one client, Victor's employer, where Victor had arranged for it to receive contracts. He was paying his mistress a salary out of money he siphoned from our marriage, laundered through his own workplace. You have to almost admire it. Almost. But it was the third thing that made my blood actually go cold. An email chain from 4 months ago. Victor to Jean. Question. The house is in Marina's name. If it comes to a split, what are my options? Jean's answer was long, but the key sentence was this. Inherited/premarital funds are tricky. Your best angle, prove joint improvement and commingling. Renovations, additions, both incomes into upkeep. Document everything you've put into the property. If you build the file right, you can claim up to half the current value. And current value matters. The market in your area is up 40% since she built. And Victor's reply, one line, I will remember it for the rest of my life. Good. Then I need about 6 more months. She doesn't suspect anything. She's still making me soup for the road, LOL. LOL. 19 years of marriage, and I was a LOL in an email to a real estate guy. I sat back from the laptop. Something inside me, the last soft thing, the part that had still been whispering, maybe he just fell in love. It happens. People fall in love. That part quietly closed its door and turned off the light. Because falling in love is a weakness. This was a project. 5 years, minimum. He wasn't leaving me. He wasn't even planning to just leave me. He was planning to leave with half my grandmother's house, the house he'd financed his second family from, and he was documenting renovations while I documented his cholesterol. Marina, Tamara's voice, quiet. Breathe. I'm breathing. No, you're not. Breathe. I breathed. And then I said the sentence that started the second half of this story. Tamara, he needs 6 months to build his file, which means we have 6 months to build ours. And ours is going to be better. Because he has Jean from a real estate office. I turned the laptop toward her. And he's up against an accountant with full access and a school principal he still thinks is dying. For the first time since she'd walked through my door, Tamara laughed. A real laugh, sharp and young. There she is, she said. There's the woman. Now, what do we do first? What we did first, that same Sunday night, was put everything back exactly as it was. Laptop, same spot, same angle, charger cable draped the same way. Browser history, untouched. We'd photographed the screen with my phone instead of forwarding anything. Tamara wiped her fingerprints off the mug and washed it. Habit, she said. Don't ask. Then she packed her suitcase. You're leaving? I felt a stab of panic. 3 days, and I'd already forgotten how to be alone in this house. I'm going home, she said, buttoning her gray coat. Because starting this week, my dear son is going to learn that his mother has taken a sharp turn for the worse. She looked at me over her glasses, and in her eyes there was something I can only describe as artillery. You found his file, Marina. Now we build yours. And every good file needs pressure. Something that forces a man to move faster than he planned, make calls he shouldn't make, sign things he shouldn't sign. Panicked people get sloppy. She picked up her suitcase. A dying mother was his best lie. Now it's going to be my best weapon. Let's find out what my son does when he thinks the inheritance is about to slip away. She paused at the door. Oh, and Marina, this Friday when you pack his bag, put in an extra note for me. Something warm. He never reads them. He just throws them in the glove box. A thin smile. But she rides in that car. And a woman always reads another woman's notes. Trust me. We may find that useful. The door closed behind her. I stood in the hallway of my house, bought with my grandmother's money, The house my husband was measuring for cutting in half, and I felt the floor under my feet like I hadn't felt it in years. At 9 p.m., Victor came home, kissed my cheek. "How was your weekend?" "Mom's a little better, thank God." "That's wonderful," I said. "Sit down, I made dinner." "Oh, and I've been thinking, maybe we should finally renovate the kitchen? You've been saying for years the house needs updating." You should have seen his eyes light up. Renovations. Joint improvement of the property. Documentation. He thought I'd just handed him a gift for his file. "Marina," he said, squeezing my hand across the table. "That's a great idea. I'll handle everything. Every receipt, every contractor. I'll keep it all organized. You won't have to worry about a thing." "I know, honey," I said, and smiled. "You always do what has to be done." He didn't even flinch at his own phrase. They never do. He had no idea that every receipt he was about to so carefully collect would be dated after the day I photographed his emails. No idea that the renovation would be paid, at my gentle insistence, entirely from his account, since money's tight on my side this year. No idea that he was about to spend the next 6 months meticulously building a file that proved his money went into my house, while the $60,000 loan with my co-signature, the drained savings, and an LLC named Alina sat waiting in a folder my lawyer would soon label Exhibit A. 6 months, Victor said he needed. Funny, that's exactly what I needed too. 2 weeks later, on a Wednesday morning, my husband got a phone call that made him drop his coffee cup. I was standing right there in the kitchen. I watched his face go through 3 colors, pink, white, gray, while a neighbor from his mother's town, an old friend of Tamara's, following a script we'd written together at my kitchen table, told him that his mother had collapsed at the pharmacy, that an ambulance had come, that she was refusing the hospital, refusing everything, and had said only one thing: "Call the notary. It's time to put my affairs in order." The notary. Put my affairs in order. You have to understand something about Tamara's affairs. She was a retired school principal, yes, but she was also the sole owner of her house, a large one by that town's standards, plus her late husband's apartment that she'd been renting out for 20 years, plus, as Victor knew very well, savings. Careful, old school, 40 years of disciplined savings. Victor was her only child. His entire life, he'd considered that inheritance simply his, a question of when, not if. And now, his dying mother, the fictional patient he'd been nursing every weekend for 2 years, was suddenly dying for real, and calling a notary. Here was his problem. His beautiful, elegant, self-inflicted problem. He couldn't say, "That's strange, she seemed fine." He'd been reporting on her decline every week for 2 years. He couldn't act surprised. He couldn't refuse to go. His own lie had just grown legs, turned around, and grabbed him by the throat. "I have to go to Mom's," he said, hands actually shaking. "Today. Now." "Of course," I said. "Should I come with you?" "No." Too fast, too loud. He caught himself. "No, honey, you know how she is. I'll handle it. I just do what has to be done, right?" "Right," I said, and packed him a thermos of soup. What Victor didn't know, that entire weekend visit had been staged like a school play, and Tamara had directed school plays for 40 years. She met him in bed, gray-faced, a talcum and ash trick she refused to explain to me, speaking in a whisper. The neighbor helped around the house and monitored, and in that whisper, Tamara delivered the lines we'd polished together, that she felt the end coming, that before she signed anything with the notary, she needed to understand her son's life. That she'd heard, small towns talk, Vitya, some strange rumor about him and some woman in Crestwood. That if her son was living in sin, deceiving his lawful wife, she, a principal, a woman of principle, would not leave a single brick to a man like that. She'd leave it all to the church, or to the school, or a pause. The pause was my idea. Or to Marina. She, at least, has been sending me warm slippers for 2 years. I'm told, by the neighbor who heard it through the door, that my husband spent the next 40 minutes swearing on everything holy that the rumors were lies, that there was no woman, that Marina was the only one, that he was a faithful husband and a devoted son. Sitting on the edge of his mother's bed, holding her hand, lying into the face of a dying woman about the grandson she'd already seen 4 years of photos of. Tamara told me later on the phone, "You know what the worst part was, Marina? He was good. If I didn't know, I would have believed him. My own son. I taught him to read." Her voice was even, but I'd learned to hear what was underneath it by then. Then he asked whether the will was drafted yet. Not how I was feeling. Whether the will was drafted. He held my hand and calculated. A pause. Whatever we do to him, my conscience is now completely clear. The trap was set. The notary would come in a month or so, when I have strength. 1 month. Victor now had a countdown clock. He had to be the perfect son and finish his house grab file and keep Alina calm, all at once. Panicked people get sloppy. That was the whole point. But here's what we didn't plan. Here's the part where the story stopped being only ours. That Sunday, while Victor sat at his mother's deathbed, his car stood in her driveway. And in the glove box of that car lay 2 years of my little notes. Get well, thinking of you, Marina. Every week he'd toss them in there without reading. Tamara, barely able to stand, asked him to bring her reading glasses from the car and made sure the glove box got opened in front of the neighbor. But it turned out the notes had already done their work, weeks earlier, on their own. Because on Monday evening, a woman rang my doorbell. Long, dark hair, about 35. I recognized her instantly. I'd spent 2 weeks looking at her beach photos. Alina, standing on my porch, holding something in her hand, and her face was the face of a person who hadn't slept. "You're Marina," she said, not a question. "I am?" She stopped, started again. "My name is Alina. I think we've been dating the same man's lies." She lifted her hand. In it, a crumpled note. My handwriting. "Get well soon, Tamara. The honey is from our neighbor's farm. Thinking of you, Marina." I found a dozen of these in his glove box last month. He told me you were his sister. His difficult, clingy, unwell sister who he had to check on out of pity. Her voice cracked. He told me he'd been divorced for 6 years. I have his child, Marina. I co-signed a business loan for him in March, and last week he asked me to sign papers making him co-owner of my house, for the family's protection. And something felt wrong, and I started reading these notes. And sisters don't pack honey and write like this, and she was shaking. Standing on my porch, shaking, this woman I'd spent 2 weeks hating. And here's what I understood in that moment, looking at her. She was me. 5 years younger, 1 child deeper, but me. The same architecture of lies, the same separated rooms, the same signatures collected with a kiss. He wasn't building a second family. He was farming 2 women in parallel and preparing to harvest us both. Her house, my house. Her loan, my loan. Whichever crop came in first. The boy is not a target, ever, Tamara's rule. But his mother had just become a witness. I opened the door wide. "Come in, Alina," I said. "Sit down. This is going to take a while. And before we start, how do you feel about meeting his mother, the real one? Turns out she's dying." I smiled. He just doesn't know of what. There is a picture I wish someone could have taken because I want to remember it forever. My kitchen, Tuesday night. Me, the wife. Alina, the mistress who turned out to be the second wife in all but name. And on the laptop screen, on a video call, Tamara, the dying mother, in her reading glasses with a notepad. 3 women, 1 salesman who could talk anyone into anything. He'd talked all 3 of us into things all right. Now we were comparing what exactly? The full picture, assembled from 3 sides, was worse than any one of us had known, and I'll spare you the accounting, but the shape of it was this. For 5 years, Victor had been quietly moving every valuable thing into positions where he could take it, and every debt into positions where we would hold it. My co-signed loan bought Alina's house, but he was now maneuvering to become co-owner of that house, meaning the debt would be mine and the asset his. Alina's LLC, receiving contracts from his employer, she'd signed everything he put in front of her, which meant if it ever unraveled, the fraud was legally hers. The inheritance from Tamara was the exit fund. And whichever of us he ended up choosing, the other would be left holding paper. "He wasn't choosing between us," Alina said quietly, staring at the spreadsheet I'd built. "He was diversifying." An accountant couldn't have said it better. Tamara took off her glasses on the screen. "So, what does he love most? Not who, he's not equipped for that. What?" "Money," I said. "No," said Tamara. "Money is just the scoreboard. What he loves is being the smartest man in the room, believing everyone around him is a mark. Take his money and he'll rebuild. Take that from him, publicly, in front of every room he performs in." She leaned toward the camera. "And he will never recover. So here is what we do. Marina, write this down." The plan took 1 month. Exactly the month before the notary. Alina's job? Keep everything normal. Better than normal. Warm. And gently, wifely, push him toward one thing. "Vitya, before we sign the house papers, let's do everything properly, officially. And you keep promising to introduce me to your mother. She's dying, my love. Daniel has a grandmother he's never met. Take us with you. Just once, before it's too late." Pressure from love, the kind he couldn't refuse without cracking the mask. My job? The file. In 3 weeks, my lawyer, a woman who, upon seeing my folder, said, "In 20 years of family law, I've never had a case gift-wrapped like this." Had everything. Divorce petition, ready to file. Proof my grandmother's funds bought the house. Proof the renovation was funded entirely by his account after the date of my documented discovery. His own meticulous receipts, time-stamped by his own hand, now proving nothing except that he'd tried. A fraud referral drafted on the loan. And a criminal-adjacent bombshell, the contracts between his employer and Alina's LLC, with Alina now a cooperating witness instead of a holding bag. Tamara's job? The stage. The notary was real, by the way. So was the new will. Tamara Pavlovna wasn't dying, but she was absolutely, gleefully putting her affairs in order. And then came the Saturday. He drove to his mother's that morning, believing this was his coronation. The will would be signed. The dying woman would bless her devoted son. I know he believed it because he was humming in the shower. 19 years, and I'd never heard my husband hum. "Kiss Tamara for me," I said at the door, handing him the thermos. "You're the best wife in the world," he said. Those exact words. I want them on the record. He arrived at 2. The neighbor met him. "She's waiting for you, Vitya. Everyone's in the living room." Everyone. I've imagined that moment 1,000 times, and Tamara described it to me twice, and the neighbor a 3rd time. So here is the composite, as accurate as I can make it. Victor walks into his childhood living room. At the table, the notary, folders open. Beside her, his mother, sitting up straight, in her formal principal's suit, cheeks pink, spine like a flagpole, visibly the healthiest 79-year-old in the county. On her left, me. On her right, Alina. And on Alina's lap, a 4-year-old boy who lights up and yells, "Daddy!" Daniel ran to him. And Victor, this is the part I keep coming back to. Victor caught his son on pure reflex, lifted him, and stood there holding the living proof of everything, in front of everyone, with a thermos of my soup still hanging from his shoulder. Nobody said anything. Tamara let the silence do its work. 40 years of principal's silence, the kind that makes 10th graders confess to things they haven't even done yet. Then she spoke. "Sit down, son. You're just in time. We're signing documents today. You always loved documents." She nodded at the notary. "First, mine, my will. Everything I own goes into a trust for my grandson Daniel. Hello, sunshine. Managed until his adulthood by 2 trustees I trust completely, Marina and Alina. You are not in it, Victor. Not one brick. The notary will confirm I am of entirely sound mind, as is my heart, which, you'll be interested to hear, has been excellent for years. But you knew that. You've been at my bedside every weekend." Victor's mouth opened. Tamara raised one finger. The 10th grader's mouth closed. "Second," she said, and I slid my folder across the table. "Divorce papers, filed yesterday. The house is untouchable and you know it. Your friend Jean explained it to you in writing. We have the emails. The renovation you so carefully documented proves only that your money improved my property. Thank you, it's lovely. The $60,000 you took under false pretenses, my lawyer calls fraud. Yours will call it something gentler, but he'll be wrong. Third," said Alina, and her voice didn't shake at all. "The house in Crestwood stays mine. The LLC is dissolved as of Thursday. And your employer received a full disclosure Friday morning. From me, as a cooperating party. They were very understanding. To me." Victor stood in the middle of the room, holding his son, turning his head from one woman to the next. Wife, mistress, mother. Looking, I swear, for the room he could still sell to. Looking for the mark. Every con man's compass. Find the person at the table who still believes you. And for the first time in 51 years, the needle just spun. "Mom," he finally said. "Mom, I can explain. Everything I did for the family. I was just doing what had to be done." I laughed. I didn't plan to. It just came out. Clean and light, like something unlocking. "Funny," I said. That's exactly what we did. People always ask about the moment of revenge. Nobody ever asks about the morning after. I'll tell you about the morning after. Victor didn't come home that Saturday or Sunday. He sat in his car outside his mother's house for 2 hours. The neighbor watched from her window. And then he drove somewhere. Not to Crestwood. Alina had changed the locks that same afternoon. Her brother spent the weekend installing cameras. Not to us. The house that was never his had stopped pretending. He checked into a motel. A 51-year-old man with a gym bag and a thermos of chicken soup he never did throw out of the car. I know about the thermos because when he finally returned my car keys through the lawyers, the thermos was still in the trunk, washed. That detail broke me a little, I'll be honest. Not out of pity, out of the sheer strangeness of it. A man loses everything and washes the thermos. Habits outlive the person. The divorce took 4 months. His lawyer took one look at our file and switched from, "We'll be seeking half the marital home," to, "My client requests an amicable resolution," in the space of a single meeting. The house stayed mine, fully, cleanly, forever. The $60,000 loan was assigned to Victor in the settlement, every cent, in exchange for us not pursuing the fraud referral. His choice. He did the math. He was always good at math, just never at the variable called other people. His employer conducted an internal review of the LLC contracts. Alina's full cooperation, every document, every signature, dated and explained, meant the company chose quiet restitution over public scandal. Victor repaid what he could, lost his job, and lost something a salesman can't work without, his references. 26 years in one industry, and every door in it now had a note taped to the inside. Last I heard, and I don't go looking, this found me on its own, he sells cars 3 towns over, used ones. I'm told he's good at it. Of course he's good at it. Now, the part that actually matters, the people. Alina and I are not friends. I want to be honest about that, because in the movies, we'd open a bakery together and laugh over wine. Real life is quieter. We are something without a name, 2 women who audited the same lie and split the findings. We speak when it concerns Daniel. We trust each other completely and see each other rarely. It's enough. Daniel is 6 now. He has a grandmother. That was the part of the plan Tamara never wrote down but never once deviated from. The boy is not a target. The trust for his future stands. And twice a month, a 79, now 81-year-old woman takes a bus 200 miles to build Lego cities with a small boy who calls her Grandma Toma and believes she can do anything. He's basically right. She stays with me when she visits. My guest room is now Tamara's room. There are reading glasses on the nightstand and a strategic reserve of peppermints in the drawer. 19 years this woman lived in my life as a cold silhouette behind my husband's shoulder. She doesn't like you. She doesn't want to see you. She's difficult. The fence he built between us was the first thing he ever built, and the last thing to fall. Last Christmas, she gave me a gift. A thermos. A new one, expensive, steel. For soup, she said. For people who deserve it. There will be such people, Marina. Don't you dare become a woman who stops making soup. I cried into her gray principal's cardigan for about 10 minutes, and she patted my back and said, "Well, well, that's enough, or I'll assign you homework." Victor sees Daniel 1 weekend a month. Supervised terms, Alina's rules. I'm told he shows up every time, on time. Make of that what you want. Daniel will grow up and do his own math about his father. Our only job, all 3 of us agreed, is to make sure he never has to do that math alone. And Tamara's will stands exactly as written. She, by the way, remains in outrageous health. Swims twice a week. Last month, she called me and said, deadpan, "Marina, I've decided to outlive everyone out of spite. I've checked with the doctor. It's feasible. Here's what I want to leave you with. For 2 years, I packed soup for a lie. And when people hear this story, they always say the same thing. How did you not see it? As if seeing is the easy part. So let me tell you what I actually learned, and it isn't trust no one. That lesson is for the wounded, and I refuse to stay wounded. I learned that a lie has an architecture. It isn't one falsehood, it's a building with load-bearing walls, and the load-bearing walls are always the same. Keep the people who love you in separate rooms. Your wife and your mother, your woman and your friends, anyone who might compare notes. So here is my test. Write it down. It costs nothing. If someone in your life is always the doorway you have to pass through to reach the people connected to you, ask why the door is there. Loving people build hallways. Liars build doors. And the second thing. When the floor fell out of my life, I wasn't saved by rage or lawyers or luck. I was saved by a phone call from a woman who owed me nothing, who could have protected her son and instead chose the truth and a stranger who sent her slippers. Every good thing in my life today grew out of that one phone call. He always said, "I'm just doing what has to be done." He meant it as armor. Turns out it works better as a blade. It just matters whose hand it's in. My name is Marina. I'm 45 now. On Fridays, I make soup. For Tamara, for Daniel when he visits, for the neighbor who watched a driveway for us once. The thermos gets used every week. It just never leaves with a lie anymore. If this story reached you, tell me in the comments. Have you ever discovered that someone built a wall between you and a person who actually loved you? And if a woman like Tamara ever saved your life with one phone call, go call her back, right now. Subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Some of them, like this one, are about how the truth always finds a door, even one a liar built.